At the height of its power, Nokia seemed less like a phone company than part of the world's infrastructure. Its devices filled shop windows, offices, and pockets across the planet. Its engineers helped build the networks beneath the mobile revolution. And in late 2007, Nokia estimated that it controlled roughly 40% of the global device market. This was not a company that failed to imagine mobile computing. Years before the iPhone, Nokia had already placed email, web access, office tools, and communications inside a pocket-sized machine. Yet the empire unraveled with astonishing speed. Less than 7 years after its peak, Nokia no longer controlled the phone operation that had made its name. Microsoft bought substantially all of that business. Then, little more than a year after the deal closed, Microsoft announced a write-down of about $7.6 billion linked to the acquisition. The technology had not simply stopped working. The system around it had changed. So how did the company that helped build the mobile future lose control of its own empire?
Nokia's story began far from electronics. Its roots reach back to 19th century Finland and a business built around pulp. Over time, the name became tied to rubber, cable, industrial equipment, and, eventually, electronics. In 1967, those businesses were brought together inside the modern Nokia Corporation. That history created an unusual corporate instinct. Nokia was not loyal to one product. It survived by changing what it was. During the 1980s, it expanded through televisions, computers, and telecommunications. But the company became complicated and financially strained. In the early 1990s, Nokia made another decisive turn. It sold unrelated divisions and concentrated its resources on mobile networks and handsets. Reinvention had saved Nokia before. This time, it would build an empire. On July 1st, 1991, Finland's Prime Minister made the first official GSM call. The conversation lasted a little more than 3 minutes. The network equipment came from Nokia. Today, that moment can look inevitable. At the time, digital mobile communication was a major technical and commercial gamble. Europe's mobile systems were divided by incompatible standards. Handsets were expensive. Coverage was limited. International roaming was difficult. And there was no guarantee that one digital system would spread across borders. GSM created a common path. It offered digital voice, more efficient use of radio spectrum, international roaming, and the possibility of much larger production scale. Nokia was positioned on both sides of the transformation. It built the network equipment, and it built the devices that connected to those networks. That combination gave the company a deep understanding of radio engineering, standards, operators, and real-world network performance. But Nokia's rise was not based on engineering alone. Its phones became smaller, lighter, and easier to use. Menus were clearer. Batteries improved. Designs began to feel less like industrial tools and more like personal objects. Nokia also understood that mobile communication would not belong to one expensive device. It developed broad product families for different countries, operators, price levels, and lifestyles. Behind every handset stood a vast machine of factories, suppliers, logistics, regional sales teams, and carrier relationships. Nokia could adapt devices to local needs, manufacture them at enormous scale, and place them into distribution channels that smaller competitors could not match. By the end of the 1990s, Nokia had become the world's leading mobile phone manufacturer. It had not stumbled into the future. It had helped standardize it, built the infrastructure beneath it, and learned how to put that future into millions of hands. For millions of people, Nokia did not feel like a technology company. It felt like the phone itself. Models such as the 3210 and 3310 became ordinary objects of daily life. They were used, dropped, repaired, passed down, and remembered. Their menus, ringtones, and physical buttons became part of a shared global language. The company's strength was not one perfect device. It was the ability to serve almost every kind of customer. Nokia could sell a basic handset in an emerging market, a rugged model for difficult conditions, a fashionable phone for younger buyers, and an advanced business device through the same worldwide organization. That breadth generated scale. It also produced knowledge. Every market taught Nokia something about radio performance, battery life, manufacturing cost, operator requirements, and human behavior. The phones were adapted for languages, networks, price levels, and local distribution systems. Components could be shared across product families. Manufacturing knowledge moved from one generation to the next. A new model did not stand alone. It entered a machine already built to design, test, produce, and distribute devices almost everywhere. And Nokia understood that the phone was becoming more than a telephone. In 1996, the Nokia 9000 communicator combined a mobile phone with messaging, an organizer, data functions, a keyboard, and a wide internal screen. It was large, expensive, and intended mainly for business users. But its meaning was clear. The telephone was becoming a computer. Later, Nokia smartphones added cameras, music, navigation, downloadable applications, multitasking, and increasingly capable internet access. The company saw many pieces of the modern smartphone before the market had agreed on what a smartphone should be. Its power extended far beyond the object in a customer's hand. Nokia had manufacturing plants, radio patents, mapping technology, software teams, industrial designers, supply chain expertise, and long relationships with network operators. Its research organization explored interfaces, materials, imaging, wireless systems, and new forms of mobile computing. The brand also benefited from familiarity. In many countries, a customer did not need to learn what Nokia represented. The company had already earned space in shops, carrier catalogs, and people's expectations. By 2007, the empire was operating at extraordinary scale. Nokia reported more than 51 billion euros in annual sales and almost 8 billion euros in operating profit. It spent more than 5.5 billion euros on research and development. In the fourth quarter, Nokia estimated that its share of the global device market had reached roughly 40%. Those numbers made the company appear almost unassailable. Its factories could flood the market with devices. Its distribution reached places competitors struggled to enter. Its brand was trusted. Its engineers understood both the handset and the network carrying its signal. But scale can hide a change in the basis of competition. Nokia's organization had been designed to create many devices for many segments. Hardware variation was a strength. Operator customization was a strength. Regional adaptation was a strength. Then the product itself began to change. In January 2007, Apple introduced the iPhone. The easy version of this story says that Nokia saw a touchscreen and failed to understand it. That explanation is too simple. Nokia already understood touchscreens. It understood mobile internet, cameras, navigation, music, and downloadable software. It had built advanced devices years earlier. What Apple presented was not merely a new collection of features. It was a new way to organize the entire experience and a new center of power inside the industry. The iPhone was designed as one integrated system. The hardware, operating system, touch interface, browser, and services were controlled under one roof. Apple supported a limited number of devices, so the software target remained clear and the experience felt consistent. Then came the App Store. A phone was no longer a finished object that left the factory with a fixed set of capabilities. It became a platform that could gain new functions after purchase. Developers were no longer outside suppliers. They became part of the product. That changed the economics of attention. A customer could choose a phone partly because of applications that Apple had not created. A developer could choose a platform because millions of customers were already there. Each side made the other more valuable. Google created a different kind of threat. Android gave many manufacturers a shared operating system and application ecosystem. Instead of facing one Apple device, Nokia faced a growing network of companies able to attack different prices, designs, and markets. Apple pressured the premium end. Android spread across the rest. Manufacturers could compete on screens, cameras, processors, form factors, and price while drawing from the same expanding developer base. Operators gained alternatives. Developers could reach multiple brands through one platform. This changed what scale meant. Nokia could manufacture more phones, negotiate with more operators, and serve more regions than almost any competitor. But an ecosystem grows through a different feedback loop. More users attract more developers. More developers create more applications. Better applications attract more users. Services, payments, identity, cloud storage, and regular software updates reinforce the platform again. The value moves from the individual handset toward the system surrounding it. Nokia still appeared extremely strong. That was part of the danger. In 2010, the company shipped nearly 453 million mobile devices. Its smartphone shipments were still growing, but the numbers beneath the volume were changing. Nokia estimated that its total device market share had fallen to 32%. Its share of converged mobile devices fell to 36%, and the average selling price of those devices declined by 21% from the previous year. The company was moving an extraordinary amount of hardware while losing structural power. High volume could support factories and revenue, but it could also delay the moment when the organization fully recognized that the market had changed. A company can remain large while the foundations of its advantage are becoming weaker. A modern smartphone required more than good industrial design and radio engineering. It needed a coherent operating system, developer tools, a reliable application store, payments, cloud services, frequent updates, and a community willing to invest in the platform's future. Nokia had pieces of that system. What it lacked was unity. Its success had produced a vast range of devices, software variants, operator requirements, and regional customizations. That complexity had once helped Nokia cover the world. Now it made rapid software transformation harder. A feature could work differently across products. Development targets could shift. Decisions that looked reasonable inside one device program could make the wider platform harder to simplify. The company's filings eventually described the competitive shift with unusual clarity. Momentum around Apple and Android was raising the barriers for anyone trying to establish another global smartphone ecosystem. The competition was no longer phone against phone. It was system against system. And the strongest systems were becoming more valuable with every new user and developer. Nokia's factories, patents, and distribution had not suddenly become useless, but they were no longer sufficient to control the future. The company needed to modernize its software, simplify its product logic, hold developers' attention, and move a huge organization in one direction, while continuing to sell hundreds of millions of devices. That was not one problem. It was several problems arriving at the same time. For years, Symbian had been one of Nokia's greatest assets. It was engineered for devices with limited processing power, memory, and battery capacity. It supported genuine multitasking and helped Nokia build smartphones long before the category became mainstream. But Symbian had grown inside a different world. Nokia's commercial strategy required many screen sizes, input methods, hardware configurations, regions, and operator customizations. Every variation expanded the market. Every variation also added software complexity. Modernizing the experience without breaking the enormous installed system became slow and difficult. Developers often faced demanding tools, multiple interface frameworks, and a target that changed from device to device. Nokia was not refusing to change. In some periods, it was changing constantly. Symbian was being redesigned. Series 40 continued to serve high-volume phones. MeeGo explored Linux-based mobile computing. MeeGo, developed with Intel, was presented as a path toward a new generation of devices. Qt was supposed to make development more coherent. OVI was intended to bring maps, media, services, and an application store under one Nokia identity. Each initiative had a logic. Together, they divided time, engineering attention, and developer confidence. A team could make progress while the company as a whole became harder to read. Researchers have described this as a curse of agility, repeated reorganizations and strategic movement without enough coherence. Another academic study found that fear and pressure damaged the flow of information inside Nokia. Senior leaders feared the speed of Apple and Google. Pressure moved downward. Technical delays and risks could lose detail as they moved upward, while teams were pushed to promise results faster. The company still had talented engineers. It still produced remarkable ideas. The N9 showed what remained possible. Its MeeGo-based interface, gesture navigation, and industrial design pointed toward a coherent alternative. But technical promise is not the same as a completed ecosystem. And by the time the N9 arrived, Nokia had already chosen another future. Stephen Elop became Nokia's chief executive in September 2010. A few months later, an internal memo compared the company's position to a worker standing on a burning oil platform. The image was dramatic, but the emergency was real. Nokia's smartphone share was falling. Symbian was struggling to match the experience of iOS and Android. MeeGo was not ready to carry the company's global device range. Developers were losing confidence. The organization needed a decision. On February 11, 2011, Nokia and Microsoft announced a broad partnership. Windows Phone would become Nokia's primary smartphone platform. The logic was understandable. Microsoft had an operating system, software tools, cloud services, and the financial resources to support a global platform. Nokia had hardware engineering, industrial design, maps, carrier relationships, and worldwide distribution. Together, the companies said they could create a third mobile ecosystem. For Nokia, the partnership avoided the time and cost of rebuilding every layer alone. It also offered a way to distinguish the company from the growing number of manufacturers using Android. But the decision contained a dangerous timing problem. Symbian was publicly placed on a path toward retirement before Windows Phone devices had reached the market at scale. MeeGo was reduced from a possible main platform to a longer-term exploration. Developers who had invested in Symbian, Qt, or MeeGo now faced another set of tools, another store, and another strategic transition. Customers and operators also had to judge whether the phones already on sale still had a future. The old platform lost confidence quickly. The new platform needed time. That gap was filled by iPhones and Android devices. Nokia introduced the Lumia 800 and Lumia 710 in October 2011. The phones were not evidence that Nokia had forgotten how to design hardware. Lumia brought bold colors, clean industrial design, strong navigation, and a distinctive physical identity to Windows Phone. Later devices pushed mobile photography further. The Lumia 1020, with its large sensor and PureView technology, demonstrated that Nokia's engineering could still force competitors to pay attention. Windows Phone itself had strengths. Its interface was visually distinctive, performance could feel smooth, and Microsoft was building connections to its wider software and cloud services. But a handset and an operating system could not repair the ecosystem by themselves. Customers judged the applications they already used, the services connected to them, the accessories available, and whether the platform seemed likely to survive. Developers made the same calculation. Supporting another platform required time and money. If the audience looked too small, the missing applications made the platform less attractive, which kept the audience small. Windows Phone grew, but it remained far behind iOS and Android in users, applications, and commercial momentum. Nokia was also dependent on Microsoft's platform roadmap. Features, compatibility, and release timing were no longer fully under Nokia's control. The partnership had been designed to combine two incomplete positions into one competitive system. Instead, it revealed how difficult it was to enter an ecosystem war after the leading platforms had already accumulated users, developers, and trust. By 2012, Nokia stated that the 808 PureView would be its final Symbian device. A platform that had powered Nokia's smartphone rise ended while Lumia was still fighting to establish a future. The rescue had not restored Nokia's control. It had moved much of that control outside the company. In September 2013, Microsoft agreed to purchase substantially all of Nokia's devices and services business. The wording matters. Microsoft was not buying the whole Nokia Corporation. It was acquiring the smartphone and mobile phone operations together with relevant design teams, factories, sales, marketing, and support functions. Microsoft agreed to pay 3.79 billion euros for the business itself and another 1.65 billion euros to license Nokia's patents. The total cash transaction was 5.44 billion euros. Nokia retained important parts of its identity, including network infrastructure, patent assets, and other technology activities. The consumer device operation was being separated from the company that had built it. For Microsoft, the acquisition was meant to create tighter control over Windows phones and connect hardware more directly to its software platform. For Nokia, it ended direct control of the consumer device operation that had defined the company around the world. The transaction closed on April 25, 2014. Thousands of employees, facilities, and product responsibilities moved into Microsoft. But ownership could not instantly create the missing scale around Windows Phone. The economics deteriorated quickly. In Microsoft's reported fourth quarter of fiscal 2014, the acquired Nokia operation contributed almost $2 billion in revenue, but an operating loss of $692 million. Then, in July 2015, Microsoft announced a major restructuring of its phone hardware business. It would reduce up to 7,800 positions, mainly in phones. And it would record an impairment charge of approximately $7.6 billion related to assets associated with the Nokia acquisition. The size of that charge became a brutal measure of how far expectations had fallen. It did not mean every Nokia patent, engineer, or technical achievement had become worthless. It meant the phone business Microsoft believed it was buying had failed to produce the future expected from it. The empire had not simply changed owners. The integrated system that once connected Nokia's design, manufacturing, software, operators, and global consumer identity had broken apart. Much of the economic value attached to that system disappeared with it. Nokia did not vanish. The company that remained still held important patent assets, network technology, and deep telecommunications expertise. It continued as an infrastructure and technology business, far less visible to ordinary consumers, but still connected to the systems beneath modern communications. That survival was consistent with Nokia's long history. The company had changed identity before. Pulp, rubber, cable, electronics, and mobile phones had each defined different eras. The Nokia name later returned to consumer phones through licensing arrangements. But that was not a restoration of the old empire. The original power had come from integration. Factories, industrial design, radio engineering, software platforms, supply chains, operator relationships, and a global consumer brand had once reinforced one another inside the same organization. After the sale, those pieces no longer worked together in the same way. That is why Nokia's fall cannot be explained by one touchscreen, one executive, or one operating system. The company helped build GSM. It understood mobile computing early. It spent billions on research. It produced devices that changed how entire generations communicated. Its engineers continued to create strong hardware, imaging systems, mapping tools, and network technology even while the phone business declined. But the market had changed what it rewarded. During Nokia's rise, advantage came from radio knowledge, manufacturing quality, distribution, and the ability to create many devices for many customers. During the smartphone era, advantage came increasingly from controlling a coherent platform around the device. Software, developers, applications, services, payments, updates, and user identity became part of the product. Nokia had many of those pieces, but they were divided across platforms, teams, and strategies. Its organization kept moving, but not always in one direction. Its leaders faced real pressure, but pressure made honest technical communication more difficult. Its product machine was optimized for breadth, while the new market rewarded consistency. Its scale protected revenue for a time, while making structural decline easier to underestimate. And its partnership with Microsoft was a rational attempt to escape a worsening position, but it arrived after Apple and Android had already built powerful feedback loops. The transition weakened Nokia's old platform before the new one could replace its scale. None of these causes worked alone. Together, they turned engineering strength into strategic fragmentation. The tragedy is not that Nokia stopped inventing. It is that invention, strategy, organization, and ecosystem stopped moving together. What survived was still valuable: networks, patents, engineering knowledge, and a company capable of another transformation. What disappeared was the consumer empire that had once seemed inseparable from the mobile phone itself. Nokia built parts of the future that everyone else would use. But when the center of power moved from the handset to the ecosystem around it, the company could no longer keep control of the whole system. It built the future. It lost the empire.